Hello everybody, I'm Krasiattasio. I'm a sidereal astrologer, and today I will talk about astrology and depression. I would rather not say depression, even though nowadays this is the contemporary terminology. I would call this condition melancholy, and I will explain you why. It is very important, and the vibrations are encoded into every word we say. So it's very important that we choose the right and most appropriate terminology when describing disease or anything or condition or just anything. So let's not call this condition depressed. It comes from pressure. It's too far. I would say melancholy. I chose to describe how to see this in the horoscope. What are the astrological signs of depression? I will, of course, propose remedies such that I think work. But in any case, this is condition that was known since antiquity. It is even known that Plato himself was Saturnine, was melancholic. Many wise men from the past, sages, were known to have been melancholic due to the powerful Saturnine influences in their charts. But I will talk about this in detail, and I will show you amazing horoscope, which is pretty ancient, but very, very interesting. And astrology and melancholy. First, it is known, of course, that Saturn is the lord of tears. Saturn is the lord of anxiety, grief. Saturn is the one who is responsible for our karma to be fulfilled in this incarnation. So certainly we know that Saturn is the main cause for grief, tears, melancholy, to each one of us without exception. Of course, it's not only Saturn. There are many stars, fixed stars, which can be reason for dark emotions. And in particular, very important and very good reason for sadness, melancholy, are the nebulas. You may see my very recent video on the nebulas. And basically, my approach towards analyzing the nebulas is not the modern approach, but is the approach of the ancient astrologers who would look at the nebulas simply as darkness in the sky. And this is what they are, because very rarely, I haven't seen actually such case, the nebula would bring to someone bright emotions or happiness or joy. Typically, they're associated with darkness of the sight, like eye diseases, or darkness of the emotions. So look at my video if you wish, and there you will see, I don't want to get so much into this again, and there you will see details on the degrees of the nebulas and how they influences in particular. So melancholy, astrology and melancholy. When you're searching, before I show you the horoscope, which is truly amazing, very, very interesting, and I'll also quote, of course, the author who is truly amazing as well, and who inspired me to talk about melancholy. Before that, just to tell you that when you're searching for signs of melancholy or anxiety or fears or tears in the chart, you certainly need to look at the luminaries, the sun and the moon, and even more at the moon, because the moon is more associated to our soft feelings, to our soft emotions. So any afflictions of the moon to Saturn is already enough. Any affliction is already good reason for melancholy, for the person will be prone to be melancholic. Of course, I will illustrate my words. I will show you also some interesting stars, but basically Saturn is the lord of tears and the lord of grief. So I'm sharing my screen. We'll talk, this is the horoscope of amazing astrologer, astrological magician, and this is Leo Pacino, who was born in 1433 in Italy somewhere, and this is his natal chart, and this is the sidereal astronomical look at his natal chart. At his time, the tropical zodiac was already in use, but I feel that his melancholy was more visible through the sidereal chart. Now, Marsilio Ficino, my favorite medical astrologer, you can learn a lot from him. So Marsilio Ficino was inspired to research on melancholy and astrology because he was born melancholic. And his words are that Plato was melancholic and Plato was Saturnine, and all wise men and all sages, according to him, are melancholic. And yes, this is a very Saturnine horoscope. The timing and the date of birth is I found in his book, in his amazing trilogy, Marsilio Ficino. So this is the rising sign is Saturn. And then he has Saturn on the ascendant. But what is here more visible and more certainly sign of melancholy is that Saturn, being on the ascendant, very, very powerful in his own sign, is also in Saturnian term. And Mars is also on the ascendant. This is heavy conjunction. It's certainly not an easy conjunction because you see that Mars is exalted together with Saturn. So both malefic on the ascendant is certainly not an easy configuration and can be a reason for a person who will be Saturnine, who will be melancholic. I will speak about the reasons and what this is causing. It's very interesting. But first to tell you, look also at the exact almost square between, actually no, it's not exact, but there is a square between the Sun, Mars, and Saturn. So we have affliction of a luminary. And then Mercury, very interestingly, Mercury, which is representing his mindset. Mercury is in such degree very Martian, and it is aspecting actually Mars and Saturn. So Mercury with aspect with two malefics is a very good reason for to think already of melancholy. Also, Mercury is in Scorpio, very near the powerful Martian royal star Antares. Mercury in Antares, it's not very positive. The mind to be in Antares, in such a Martian star, it looks like affliction to me. I will not talk about the fact that Uranus is making exact opposition to the Sun. This is only adding towards the fact that the person is having melancholic emotions. The Moon in the 12th house, look, with the lunar node, can be another reason to think of such condition. There are no particular nebulas to afflict him and to be additional reason for melancholy, but what we see is enough. Cancer nebulous, the one that is the most harmful, is not afflicting him. So for now, this, but the lunar node is only 1 degree away from, and it's in the 12th house, the house of restrictions, the house of isolation. So this isolated state of the Moon in the 12th house is quite harmful for his soul, together with Ketu, and Ketu is in the 1 degree away only from the nebula of Sagittarius, of the Milky Way. And by the way, Marsilio Ficino, this particular placement of the Moon and Rahu is, of course, wonderful reason and certainly speaks a lot for his knowledge, for his esoteric research, for his astrological talents. So all this is to be seen, of course. Why he became so visible, it's another story. The Sun is in Gemma, another star, but we're not talking about his visibility and the fact that he was famous already at his time. So what is he saying? It's very interesting. He knew, of course, about his melancholy. He suffered from this. He describes this in a letter to a friend, and he's saying, Saturn seems to have impressed the seal of melancholy on me from the beginning, as he is almost in the midst of my ascendant. So he's influenced by Mars. I'm quoting his letter, and the moon is in as well positioned in such way. So he's in a square to the Sun and Mercury, which occupy the 9th house. It's the 11th, but we're talking about another tropical approach that he did. But Venus and Jupiter perhaps offered some resistance to this melancholic nature. So yes, we have the saviors here, and this is Jupiter and Venus, which are certainly aspecting and helping a bit, to a degree. What, according to the ancient astrologers, was the reason, the technical reason behind melancholy? It's not just the Saturn, but how Saturn acts. First, let me tell you that when in ancient Mesopotamia, there are many interesting evidences on cuneiform tablets, and the medicine of ancient Mesopotamia was very fascinating, very interesting. It was purely herbal, gemstones were used, but there was one amazing part of the medicine in ancient Mesopotamia, which would involve exorcism. So any condition which would be harmful for the soul, they would then call exorcist, and he would do incantations or rituals to help the one who suffers. So exorcisms was really widely used, and this was, I very much believe that this was a helpful mean. Then they would do a lot of incantations. They would do rituals to give respect to the planet, which is a reason behind a certain complaint. And here, Ficino is explaining that he wrote again to his friend, and he said, yes, you advise me, you are urging me to sing another hymn of recantation to Saturn. So this was one of the rituals that he was doing, and he was a magician. He was amazing astrological magi and physician. So, and then he says, but Plato was as well melancholic, and this is itself a unique and divine gift, the melancholy, because this can be a very productive state, actually. So what, according to the medieval and Renaissance astrologers, and also the previous ancient astrologers, what is behind this condition? What is actually happening technically with our body? So they not only, actually, Marsilio Ficino very much quotes Plato in his amazing trilogy, and he explains that the reason he looks at the planets based on their elements. So we know that Saturn, who is causing melancholy or any dark state of mind, is planet whose nature is dry and cold. So that is why he explains that especially this preoccupies the mind, and the body starts producing the so-called black bile. And then his recipe is to do a lot of physical activity, sports, to decrease the intake of fatty food, to take more vegetables, fruit, to do sports, to be very athletic. And this is the way to move the blood in our bodies in case that the person is melancholic, and to reduce the quantity of the black bile in the body, because he explains that the blood becomes darker with less quantity of liquid. And tenser. And that's why he says that the body needs a lot of liquid through simply taking liquids, adding vegetables, adding fruits, and doing a lot of physical work, athletic works, and sports. This is what he advises. And basically, many ancient astrologers would advise similar recipes against condition like, excuse me, to stop sharing, like melancholy. Yes, of course, there are stars apart from the nebulous, which can be reason for melancholic state. And these are yes, the Pleiades nebula as well can be a reason, especially if the moon is there. Can be also reason behind some dark emotions. But even the simple transit of Saturn, would be squaring the moon and the sun of the native, can be reason for dark moods. Eclipses can be reason if the eclipse is happening on the ascendant or is darkening a luminary. This can be reason for dark moods and melancholy. Very often you can see that Ketu conjoined with moon or the sun can be a reason for melancholy. The ascendant ruler placed in the 8th or in the 12th house can create a reason for the person to be prone to melancholy. But there is always a way to fight this, either through the recipes of the medieval astrologers or through uplifting our spiritual level. Because remember, in ancient Mesopotamia, such conditions would be cured with exorcism. But why? They knew more than us. They were truly amazing astronomers. And the little that we can learn from them is a gift. They created astonishing celestial maps, which, when we use them nowadays, are helping like the best ever predicting techniques. So I'm just saying this to tell you that exorcism sounds a bit too crazy, but the technique of exorcism is basically to chase away bad spirits or elementals from the dark side, which are coming to influence our thoughts, our souls. Isn't this happening nowadays? And why exorcism is not common, I don't know why anymore, but people who would have powerful Saturn influence would be prone to be influenced by dark spirits. And then incantation or ritual against these spirits would be helpful. Either we'll call it exorcism or just ritual to help ourselves doesn't matter. The point is that there is a way this to be solved. Spirituality, meditation, uplifting our vibrational level, doing what Saturn requires, and this is discipline. And exactly what Ficino says, maybe sport, maybe athletic activities, whatever. It is all related to discipline. The higher moral values very much would please Saturn to afflict us less. So this is very important. And every affliction of Saturn to a luminary, either as a fact in the natal chart or as a simple transit, or happening on the ascendant of someone, like a transit, or happening in the primary directions. The primary directions are not the transits, but it is when the whole sky, the celestial sphere is moving, and it's creating certain aspects to angular places and so on. So all this can create melancholic states, and we all can be victims of this, but there is a solution. And I thought this was interesting, especially when I'm telling you that Plato, in his Platonic theology, and you know how ancient Plato is talking about melancholy, so many ancient authors, and their advice is similar as the one that Leo Pacino is quoting. So with this I am completing. I hope it was interesting. Thank you for your attention.